once again to the Jazz Musician's Voice. My name is Jonathan, and thanks for tuning in. Today I have the wonderful opportunity of speaking to a really great friend of mine, Peppe Merolla. He's a wonderful jazz drummer and all-around musician. In fact, he plays many instruments, including piano and trumpet, and he's actually the child of two famous musicians in Italy. And for a time, he was even a movie actor and television actor, all around great cat. Someone that I met when I first came to New York, playing at Smoke Jazz Club. He really established himself there, playing with some of the real masters of this music. And he moved to the West Coast, to San Francisco, and he's out there teaching and doing many of his videos and doing all sorts of great stuff. And I hope you guys will really enjoy the information that Peppe has to instill on us. And we did this interview over Skype, so I really hope you enjoy this interview. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned because we have a lot more future content coming out. So, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm really fortunate to speak to a good friend of mine and an incredible musician, Peppe Merolla. I've known Peppe actually for quite some time. My first days arriving to New York, he was a regular on the Smoke Jazz Club scene. You know, I would see him very frequently at Smoke. We were fortunate enough to play many times during the jam session and also gigs with John Farnsworth Quintet. And
Thanks
now,
for having me.
yes, now you're living across the country in San Francisco, in California. Uh, but
Yes, I do.
you do play and perform around the globe. So
Yes.
yes, I want to start. We're going to go back to your early beginnings. You're actually born in Italy, and you're from Italy, and both your
Yes.
parents are established musicians and actors, famous in Italy. Tina Barone and Gino Morelli. Um,
You got a great pronunciation right there. You pronounce it really great. I love it.
that,
Yeah,
that,
Gino Morelli e Tina Barone. Yeah.
yeah, I watch enough mob movies, Italian. Uh, so, can you talk a little bit about what it must have been an experience to have parents who are both professional musicians? You already start touring and performing from the age of 5 years old. So, talk a little bit
Yes.
about that.
Well, I was very fortunate to to be surrounded by music since I was born. Uh, in fact, uh, my mother, when she was expecting me, the last month, on the ninth month, she was working in a theater as an actress, and the water broke right in the middle of the second set of
Wow.
the show, and they had to close the curtain. The ambulance was outside, came right away, and here I am. Here I was born,
Mhm.
right, literally on the stage, and it was a very to me. I've been surrounded by music all my life, and I've been listening to all different type of music. As you know, my parents, they both sing classical Neapolitan and folk Neapolitan songs. So I grew up with that kind of music, and I was just listening that type of music all the time. Following my parents all over Italy, and you know because they were performing. But the reason why I started playing with them, that's like a very cool story behind that you might want to know, and people might want to know because it's kind of very cool actually. My parents, they were touring all over Italy. Now the drummer of the band got stranded in north, or excuse me, south of Italy. So he lost the plane. Now the whole band with my parents, we were up north, and the theater was packed. My father was very upset. because the drummer was a very important part of the band, since in the show there was a comedian. So the comedian sometimes, when you play Broadway kind of thing, kind of show, um, the comedian on certain movement, motion that he does, the drummer supposed to play along with that. So you got to really know the show, and the drummer was a very important part of the band because of that. So the bass player told my father, said, Gino, your son is always at the rehearsal. He memorized the whole show and the music. In fact, Chicho, which was the drummer, he let him play all the time, and he would go out and do something else, because Pepe knew the show. And my father says, what are you talking about? He's only 5 years old. I'm not going to take a chance. Yeah, I'm not going to take a chance of having a little kid, 5 years old, playing in the theater for the first time, and the theater was packed. My father was really upset. So the bass player told my father, says, Gino, hear this. There's going to be a pad. In the theater, there's a pad where the musicians, they play in the pad, right? Down in the pad.
Yeah.
And he said, nobody's going to see him. Let him play. And if he does not do what he needs to do, I'm going to fire myself. I don't need you to fire me. I'm going to fire myself. So my father says, okay. There was no way he could hire somebody else, because it's hard to do like a first reading, call someone that, find someone, first of all, find someone available, someone who can read, and someone who has a lot of experience. So my father had no choice. He said, okay, but make sure that if he makes any mistakes, stop him. We go on without the drums. He was like, don't worry. So to make a long story short, since that night, the drummer never came back. I was the drummer, for my parents, and I started touring with them all over Italy, South America. We did the opening for the great Frank Sinatra in Montreal at the arena. And in fact, Frank Sinatra was the one who nicknamed me Little Joe. That's what happened. That's how I found myself
Wow.
working at 5.5 years old.
So yeah, I mean, we're that's incredible to have that tutelage of your parents and also then Frank Sinatra. And you actually got a recording contract out of that meeting with Frank. You did almost 3 records at the age of 14, right?
Yes, actually, my first one was with my mom. My mom, she had a hit. It's a classical. It was a classical. It was Neapolitan songs, more contemporary. Um, and I was the one who was singing with her as a duet. The song became very popular, and that was one of the songs that really brought us all over the place, even in Canada. That's one of the songs that was very popular. People were hiring my parents because of that. They wanted to hear that song. They wanted to see that little boy.
Yeah.
Also because I not only I was singing with my mom, I was also playing the drums and playing underneath my mother's shoes, at 5.5 years old. So I was pretty much doing all that stuff. And then when we went back over the years, um, I had an opportunity to from a Zeus record, and I made 3 record deal for 33, those vinyl
Yeah.
33.
Yeah.
I made 3 of those, and then since then I was start singing. Then I stopped for a while playing the drums, and I was start singing. But my heart, of course, and I would suggest this to anyone who are listening right now: if you have a passion, follow your heart. Forget about the money. Money will not buy happiness. Follow your heart, because there is nothing that can buy your happiness. My heart was into drumming. So I stopped singing, and everyone in my family, my manager, My mom, my parents, it was like, "Are you crazy? You're doing great, and things are going great for you." And I said, "I'm done. I'm crazy. I want to play jazz music." So and that's what I did. That's what I did, and so that once again, if you have a passion, if you love something, pursue, listen, and follow your heart, which is the most important thing. We only live once, and we need to be happy with what we do.
Well, yeah, let's go back a little bit because you also actually attended conservatory in Naples, Italy, for classical trumpet, and a lot
Yes.
of people would not know this. This is something I've seen with a lot of cats. I didn't know that George Colligan also was a classical trumpet major, and
Hmm.
you know, I myself, I did get my grandfather's king trumpet, and I took a few lessons, but it's a challenging instrument. Um, so, talk a little bit about
Uh,
trumpet playing and how that happened.
how that happened. So I at the time, I think it was 1970, 75, 76. There was not percussion department, excuse me, drum set, jazz drum set in the conservatory. So as you know, in Italy, it's more like it was mostly was classical music. So and my teacher says, okay, well, you can get your degree, you can graduate in percussion, classical percussion. I said, I don't want to play percussion. I wanted to be a drummer. That's what the problem was. So and then I pick up the trumpet. I says, if I have to go to school and do something that I'm not into it, at this point, I want to feel the challenge. I'm going to just go ahead and pick an instrument that I never played before, that I'm not even familiar with. And I choose the trumpet. So the reason why I choose the trumpet, because I said, maybe playing a melodic instrument, like an harmonic also, piano, because I also play piano. And I learned that on my own. We can talk about that afterwards. But playing a melodic instrument, knowing about music, harmony, it will make me a better drummer eventually, and that's what happened. So I got in the conservatory. I did the I passed the test because what happened in Italy, you have a day that they invite you, and you have to pass the test. If you pass the test, you're in because you don't pay the schools in Italy. Schools in Italy are free. Okay, so you gotta really be somebody that is good, and that will take you. Otherwise, you know, you're out. You might go the following year. So I passed the test, and I started, studying trumpet. Then at the beginning was tough. It was difficult for me because it was a different thing. I have never
Yeah,
played
that's a hard
trumpet
instrument.
before, but then over the years, I fell in love with the instrument, and I was getting better. I was getting really good at it, you know. And I was taking also private lessons from a very good symphonic trumpet player. And when I graduated as classical trumpet player, maybe a couple of years before, I was already working as a trumpet player, working in different, situation, different genre, from classical to pop music to folk music. I was also getting gigs as a trumpet player, you know, and that's what I did. Then after I graduate as a trumpet player, I was working, as I said, as a I was getting gigs actually as a drummer, keyboard player, and drums. But everybody was like, "Man, you know, I don't think you're gonna get enough work because of that. The people cannot classify you." That's what happened to my dear friend and great musician, Gary Husband, right? Gary Husband is a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
musician, and that's what happened to him. You know, Gary Husband plays with John McLaughlin and a lot of people. And we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, actually. And he was telling me the same thing. He says, "Man, I had the same problem. There's a lot of people, they see you playing the drums, then play the trumpet, play the piano. This, that questioning. They're going to say, where should I classify you? Where do you belong? Who are you? You know. So I never really care about that, but I got to a certain point that after a while, I said, you know what, I'm going to dedicate myself only on one instrument and do that, But now I am inserting again. I'm picking up my trumpet again. I'm practicing again. I'm practicing my keyboard because I realized that at the end, whatever people think, or any issues that people say, "Well, is he a trumpet player? Is he a piano player?" I don't care as long as I can give what I feel, the music that I feel inside, that I can give, and people can feel the motion and the passion of what I have inside. Can be through the drums, on the keyboard, on the trumpet. I don't care. So now I'm practicing again those two instruments, piano and keyboard, again, along with the drums.
I mean,
It
that's
makes
really
me a
great.
better musician.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing multi-talented. I mean, you're doing singing, you're doing piano, you're doing trumpet, and you're doing drums. And something that many people may not know, you're also a pretty talented actor, and you actually appeared on several television shows and movies in Italy for a time. That was
Yeah.
kind of a focus of yours. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, speaking of trumpet, what happened? Because see, the trumpet led me to become an actor. And how? At the time I was working the national television, I was 18 years old, and I was on this program called Sabato, Domenica e Lunedì with Giancarlo Magalli, which was on the national television. And I was the trumpet player for Claudio Simonetti band. Claudio Simonetti is the guy who wrote the famous soundtrack for all those horror movies, Suspiria and Opera and all that stuff. So I was in the band with him because he's also a great arranger. He arranged and produced lots of pop material, pop music, commercial music. He was very well involved in the business. So I was playing trumpet. Now, during the break, at 1 o'clock, the lunch break, all the other guys from the band, they used to go to the restaurant, for lunch. And I used to stay in the studio because I love my mother's food. My mother's, when she cooks, she's great. So I was bringing my food from Naples all the way to Rome, you know, and everybody went to the restaurant, and I used to stay in the studio waiting for the guys to come back. And after lunch, I would sit down on the piano and play and singing classical Neapolitan songs. So after a while, I see this guy coming in the studio, and he just stopped, and he was looking at me. He was like, "Hey man, since classical Neapolitan songs are very popular in the world, and the guy loved classical Neapolitan, so he stopped and he was like, "Hey man, let me ask you a question, but you play and sing so beautifully." That's what he said. I don't believe that, but that's what he said. Um, so, uh, uh, let me ask you a question. Would you be interested in doing a soundtrack for a movie, which this movie was Spugnizzi, which then we won a movie festival, Venice Movie Festival. We won an Oscar. We won an Oscar for the movie um, Venice Movie Festival at the time. But he said, "Would you be interested, in singing soundtrack?" And I said, "Yeah." In my mind, I was like, "Yeah, more money, more money for me." So I said, "Yeah, of course, I'll do it." And the guy was like, "Okay, so 4 o'clock this afternoon, I'll meet you at my studio in Rome, and I'm going to introduce you to the movie conductor, movie director, excuse me." I said, "Yeah, not a problem." So I went there, but before I went there, I made my research. I said, "Who's this guy?" I got his name. His name was Claudio Mattone. Then I find out that Claudio Mattone was like a big deal for all the Sanremo festivals, all the hits, Italian hits. He was the one on the road. the music for it. I said, oh my goodness, I think I was rude to this guy. I hope he's not angry at me now. So I went there and he was like, here it is from Naples. It's like a really street guy here, street guy, street smart. In fact, Scugnizi, the movie, Scugnizi means street boys, you know. Um, uh, and then he was like, here it is. Would you sing a song for our director, Nanni Loy, which was a big deal. And when I met him, I said, wow, it's Nanni Loy. So I play the song on the piano and I sing. And he was like, man, do you know how to act? I said, of course. I lied. I said, of course I know how to act. He was like, where did you go to school? How did you learn how to act? And I said, well, I'm from Naples. Naples is just like, living in New York City, in the Bronx or in Harlem, same kind of vibe. I said, from my mother's balcony, when every time I go outside the balcony, I look at the people, what's happening on the street, people getting in a fight, people kissing behind a wall, not because, the little secret love. And then people selling cigarettes, people, that's how I learned because if you live in Naples, you see the way the energy of Naples. You're an actor right there. You don't need to go to the theater to acting school to learn how to act. You would be natural. You'd be just natural. And he goes like, I like this guy. And he goes like, so how about if I give you a role in this movie, which was one of the main character. And I said yes. So that was the beginning. So I did that movie. We won an Oscar with them, and a lot of people start, since the soundtrack became very, very popular. Even nowadays, they're still recording a new version of what we recorded 27, 28 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
They're still making a new version of Scugnizi with new singers and new actors, you know. And so what happened after that, I was start getting my more recognition, and people were asking me, other movie director, to offer me some roles in different movies, which I did also. La Piovra Cinque with Vittorio Mezzogiorno, and then I did Venti di Mare with Teresa Vesio and Luca De Filippo and many other great singers and actors from Italy. So that's
Wow.
how the whole thing happened. And even then, even I left. I couldn't take it no more.
You know, for a time you were on the jazz scene in Europe, but talk little bit about that and how you moved to the United States.
Well, the jazz music started. I started listening to jazz music at the age of I must be like 10, 11 years old. My teacher, um, when I called him up, I mean, when my parents called him up, he says, my son, he was like, this, my son, he needs to do it. He needs to be serious about learning, about learning drums, and he's very serious. So the very first lesson from that, when I took very first lesson from him, he played a record for me, and the first record he played was Buddy Rich and Art Blakey. And when I heard that, I said, wow. My teacher said, now listen, anything you played so far, forget about it. Just, those are the drummers you want to listen to, And he introduced me to Buddy Rich, Blakey, and all that stuff. So I was listening, excuse me, I was start listening to all those great musicians and music, And then I was going to a jam session just like everybody else, going to the jazz club, sitting in jam session and meet people. And then eventually I got some calls, and I got calls from a lot of people like Rava, Piera Nunzi, uh, a lot of people. We did the Umbria Jazz Festival many times. Some of the major jazz festival and clubs in Italy, and then I said, you know what, this is something that I really want to do, seriously. And that was the moment that I decide I am going to New York. I got to move and go to New York City. Which I didn't go to New York right away, but I came here to San Francisco first. Which was a good, it was a good thing. I didn't know anybody yet. I could speak English when I came here in 1996. I was waving, to people say, "Hello, I play drums. I play drums." So it took me, it took me a long time, but I made some good, contact here first in San Francisco at the time, 1996. Then I went to Las Vegas from San Francisco, and then from Vegas, I said, "That's it. Now it's time." And I went to New York City, and I got in New York City exactly 1990. No, year 2000. Year 2000.
And you also had mentioned to me you were very familiar with cats on the Philly scene. You told me about the. I never got to do the interview
Yes.
with Mickey Roker, but he told me about Philadelphia. So, talk to us a little bit about your arrival in the East Coast of the United States.
Well, I think I did. The great thing that I thought it was a mistake actually, because a lot of musicians they move directly to New York, and I felt the same. I said, I want to move directly to New York. Why should I go like 2 hours away, an hour 45 minutes away? I have to drive the commute. But the reason why I went, I lived in Yardley, PA at the time, which was like 20 minutes away from Philadelphia, and it's only like 1 hour 10 minutes from New York City. It's because the family, good schools, had a big place for my family to live in. I had my own basement where I could practice. So it's okay, you know what? That's what it is. At least I'm like an hour away from New York. But in Philadelphia, I met some of the most influential musicians, influenced musicians ever that I ever met. The great Sid Simmons was a great piano player. He was also the piano player for Philly Joe Jones. He was keyboard player for Groove Washington Jr. And then he decided not to play that, not to play with Groove Washington Jr. anymore, to just concentrate in playing bebop. But Sid Simmons was a wonderful musician. Then I met Mickey Rooker in Philadelphia. I met Edgar Bittman in Philadelphia, great drummer. So many great musicians in Philly, and the music in Philly is very deep. And what I did, I said, okay, cool. For the first year and a half, maybe 2 years, I was showing up, going to the jam session at Ortlieb's Jazz House in Philadelphia without playing at all. I was there to listen to Mickey Rooker every Tuesday night, and underneath my jacket, I had a little recorder. I was recording everything he was playing, the repertoire, because I said, if I gotta do this, I gotta do it right. I want to know the music. I want to know the arrangement. That when the time comes, I want to be ready for it. Uh, so, and that's what I did. Philadelphia was great. So I took that experience from Philly, then I came to New York. And in New York, I saw a different vibe, completely different animal. And I said, oh my goodness. So now, what's happening now? So going to New York and see that kind of thing for me, which was very inspiring, made me say and made me think, okay, now starting again, I'm going to be like this for a year, listening to all those guys, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the great musicians that, and not even play, just like record, just watch them and listen to what's happening, get the vibe. Because playing jazz music, as if you're a jazz musician, if you are a jazz musician, you need to be in those cities like Chicago, Philly, New York. You know, uh, you need to be there. You got to see the vibe. You got to hear certain things. It's about feeling it. You got to smell it in a way. It has to be part of you. that type of talking, the type of playing. You got to see it. You got to leave that moment, and then you can go and live anywhere else. Because then I realized after many years in New York, I said, okay, cool, now I got it, and this is related to who I am really. So, and it kind of like in a way linked my personality, my way of playing with New York and Philly. It's all one mix, and there it is. So I went to New York, and then a year later, I would start playing with some people.
Yeah, I mean,
I met you. We had a great gig in New
yeah,
York.
we
We
had
had a great gig in the Bronx. Do you
yeah,
remember?
yeah, Linda's Jazz Nights with John Farnsworth. Yeah, great
Yeah.
stuff. And I mean, actually performed with some really big names like George Garzone, the late great Harold
Yeah.
Mayburn, Vincent Herring, Eric Alexander, Mike Ledon, Joe Morelli, Steve Davis. Um,
Yes.
Man, so many great musicians. Uh,
Steve
yeah,
Turre. So many.
Steve
So
Turre.
many.
Talk to us about working with some of these guys.
Well, I have to say that I would like to thank because I'm always, excuse me, I'm very grateful to uh, to the people who helped me, and I will always be grateful, even if tomorrow I will become the most in-demand superstar in the world. I will always be who I am, and I will always be grateful to the people who helped me at the beginning, because it's important to say that. I have to say thanks to John Farnsworth, because John Farnsworth was the very first person in New York City, because in Philadelphia, Mickey Rooker was the one who helped me, and Sid Simon was calling me, and Mickey Rooker recommended me for many other gigs. But in New York City, who introduced me to all those people, and really he took a chance in a way, was John Farnsworth. I was going, as you know, at Smoke Jazz Club. They used to have a jam session every Monday night, and John was running the jam session at Smoke every Monday. And I used to show up every Monday without asking for a gig. That was the last thing in my mind. I show up, like I said, listening and maybe play a tune or two, or maybe one tune, but that's it. It was just hanging out and listening. And one night, after 2 years, a year and a half or 2 years, after the gig on a Monday night, John asked me to play on the following Monday. And, and on the gig was Aaron Mayberg. And since then, he was hiring me and calling me for these gigs a lot. So I got connected with Eric, with Ray and Harold Mayburn and Mike Ledon and many other people. To me, it was a great experience for the simple reason that those guys they have a lot more experience than I did at the time, and tunes regarding about I'm talking about tunes, songs, repertoire.
Yeah,
You know, there was some So I learned so much from that from that from that kind of gigs from them, and then we became friends and we liked each other the way we played. There's a good interplaying. There was a good interplaying between them and I. In fact, we still nowadays we still play. They still call me and they hire me like last time before the great Harold Mayburn um, made the transition. Rest in peace.
rest in
He
peace.
When he came here, when he came to California, he hired me to play with him at Monterey Jazz Festival. That was the last gig I did with Harold Mayburn. Um, so that for me was like, okay, that means I did something right, because Harold Mayburn, as you know, he's one of the legendary pianists, play with everyone,
Yeah,
you know, and and I loved him very much. But I gotta say also this that another one, the back in 1999, no, that was year 2000. Yes. Do you remember that place? Were you in New York year 2000?
No, I was. I didn't come to New York full time until 2007. I had come a couple of times
Oh,
just to sit in and stuff, but yeah, that was before my
well,
time.
there was a club on Flatbush, and the name of the club was the Upover. Now, this club was a very small club, and it was right around the corner from Vincent Herring's house. And a friend of mine, actually a friend of mine, Marco Panacea, bass player, he told me about that place. He said, "Man, if you can go there and survive at least for a tune or two, you're in." I says, "Well, I want to go." And that was the first time I went to Upover, and I met Vincent Herring there. And that was a very delicate time for me because at the time I moved to New York, my wife was expecting my first daughter, you know, and I needed money. I had no money at all in my bank account.
Yeah,
So, yes. So, anyway, after the gig, um, Vincent was like, "Hey, man, what are you doing next week?" And I said, "I'm coming back. I'm coming back to see this." He was like, "No, no, 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 no. What do you do? Are you busy?" I said, "No." And he gave me that gig, you know. So, and then John Farnsworth was the one who introduced me to a lot of people and hired me. And that's how I get connected. But I got to say, the very first gig, very first, when I really was Vincent Herring for the Upover, and then John Farnsworth. John Farnsworth and Vincent Herring. That's what happened in New
yeah,
York,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I mean, believe it or not, you know, you have been fortunate to release quite a few of your own albums over a lifetime. Uh, we'll talk about the jazz albums. I mean, you have you just came out with the recording just a few months ago, "Happy Times," with the late great Harold Mayburn on that record. But talk a little bit about recording jazz records. I think it's probably a very different process than when you were a vocalist and doing that.
Well, yes. I mean, as you know, when you record the commercial, a CD, pop CD, you don't go in the studio in one day and record the whole thing. There's a different process. It's a different type of production. You need to have all the arrangement, all the synthesizer, and electronic drum set, and different sound. It's a different production, so it takes a lot of time. Background vocals, all that stuff. But those records, um, jazz music, as you know, jazz music. Once you got the arrangements, you can record the CD. In fact, I recorded the very first one, which was in 2009. This one, "Stick with Me." Stick with Me.
Nice.
Yeah, with Steve Torre, Jim Rotondi, John Farnsworth, Mike Ledon, and Lee Smith.
Christian
This was the
McBride's dad, right? Lee Smith.
That's Christian McBride's father, yes,
Yeah,
and from Philly.
Philly. Yeah.
See, from Philadelphia. And if you listen to Lee Smith playing the bass, then you know where Christian McBride comes from, because he got the same kind of tone and sound, and you know. So, but of course, Christian went over the bar line, but but Lee is a great bass player. So, and I did this record, "Stick with Me," which we got a lot of reviews on it, and it's a great music, and to me, great music to me. But we recorded everything in the studio in 4 hours and 20 minutes. In 4 hours and
Yeah.
20 minutes, we recorded the whole thing with the whole horn session, all the arrangements, 4 hours and 20 minutes, including 1 hour for the lunch break.
That is one of the norms. I mean, Ron Carter. I think Mulgrew Miller told me about. They would go in with the Golden Striker Trio. They would record in 3 hours, and then Ron would take an hour of mixing, and then they just send it to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
done in one day. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like some of these younger cats who need to take a lot of time to splice everything up and re-record and all. The real deal.
No, no. I saw. See, that's the thing. One thing I know that I can tell you. I've been record. I got more than 200 records under my belt as a side man, as a studio musician, playing pop music in Italy.
Wow.
More than 200 records as a drummer. I did a lot of recording sessions. Uh, so I had already a lot of experience. I know I can read fast pretty well. You know, first, the second one, good. You know, but working with those guys in the studio, then I realized those guys are really deep. Those guys are really professionals. I seen Steve Torre, Jim Tony, John Farnsworth in the studio, getting all the arrangements down right there. Do the sound check. During the sound check, that was the rehearsal. I mean, we did not rehearse just for the sound check to get the levels, and then the studio engineer said, "I'm ready." He was like, "Okay, let's give it a shot, see what happens." Number one. So we played the first two. Boom. In 4 hours, we record the whole CD. The whole
Nice.
CD in 4 hours. I'm talking about it's not just a jazz quartet that you play the melody and because it's a different thing. You know, when you have the old horn session and and the rhythm session, so you got to make sure that the horn session, trombone, trumpet, saxophone, they got to be right, line up right on time, and playing nice and precise. Those guys are professional, man, and I've seen them like really nailing it. To me, it was like, yeah, that's beautiful. That was great. That's something I gotta say. It was a great experience to not only to play gigs with them, but record with them because I documented it's something that will always be out there and inside my heart, always.
Great, man. I mean, something I want to ask. I mean, we did talk we touched on a little bit, but you are a family man. You have a few children. Did you meet your wife in San Francisco area initially, or?
No, I met my wife in Italy.
Oh, okay.
I
And
met my wife
you
in
guys
Italy.
moved
She's
there.
at the time. She was you know first of all her mom, she's from Italy. So my wife, she's a classical pianist, and she was studying classical music in Italy in the school where I was teaching. And I used to take lesson there, and then I became a teacher these days. So I met my wife there, and it was a true love at first sight. We fell in love, and here I am. You know, that's how I met my
Nice,
wife.
nice.
And then after 2 or 3 years, we moved here in the United States.
So you
4 years.
moved to
Yeah.
San Francisco and you moved to East Coast. What prompted? Let's talk about what prompted you to move back to California.
Well, the reason why we moved back to California, I don't know if you really want to know. I don't know. We were talking about California, and I said, you know what? Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can go back because I made connections, and then I realized nowadays you can live anywhere you want and still travel the world, you know. Go to New York. New York is there. I mean, if I leave New York, it doesn't mean that New York is going to leave. New York will always be there for me.
Yeah.
So I made connections. I stayed in New York for more than 10 years. So I said, let's give it a shot. Whatever happens, I said, I can always go back, have a good time in New York, do my tour. I got my records, my tour, European tours, CDs, and then I can go back home in California. I enjoy the weather, and it's a beautiful weather here in California. I miss the snow. I don't miss shoveling.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
for sure. You know, but yeah, it was a good time for me to say I'm gonna give it a shot and see what happened this time. So and it came for good. I came and I realized that I can come to New York anytime I want, have some great fun, see my friends, hang out for a while, and then be back home here in California. Nowadays,
Yeah.
you can live anywhere and still travel the world and play your music.
And I'm sure there is a jazz scene there, a small jazz scene in San Francisco, right? You play.
Yeah, the same jazz scene of 26 years ago. Same thing happening. People are getting old, but same people doing the same thing. It's a little different. There are some festivals, but San Francisco is it's a nice place. I know some great musicians who live in San Francisco, like Larry Schneider. Do you remember Larry Schneider from Bill Evans' Affinities
Oh
with
yeah,
Tooth
yeah,
Silliman?
yeah.
So the saxophone player Bill Evans, which he was also saxophone player for Horace Silver, and he played with the Mingus Big Band, and Larry Schneider is definitely one of the greatest tenor jazz saxophone player in the world. He doesn't really care about marketing himself. He's in the house. We do home sessions. Like, he might come to my house and have a session here at my place, or I go to his place. But we don't really go out and play in town. You know, it's a different vibe, which I love. It's a great, some great musicians. They but it's a little different. It's a little different than New York. When you go to New York, you
Yeah.
go in, you walk into a club in New York City, you realize right next to you, George Coleman's right next to you.
Yeah,
It's a different ball game.
well,
You know,
San Francisco, it must be. I mean, I've heard the cost of living can be high there because you're by Silicon Valley, right? The software
oh,
or the software
trust
is.
me, we are thinking of moving because San Francisco is very, very expensive. I'm talking about a house here. If you want to buy a house like the house that I live in, just the rent would be up to 9,000 a month. And I live close to Palo Alto. I'm lucky because I'm at my my in-law place, and so I can do pretty much whatever I need to do, and I'm at home. So, but if that would be just for my income or my wife, we would never be able to spend $3 million
Yeah,
for a 2,000 square feet home.
the homes are
That's
expensive,
like,
but you
sorry.
do. The homes are expensive, but I mean, you do have benefits also. California, I saw some of these videos he released of going to Nam at the Nam convention. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. LA is right
yeah,
here. I mean, I
yeah,
drive to LA for gigs, and and Los Angeles is there. I love it. I just love it. And then again, I'm always online, and I'm also right now because of COVID. My tour CD release tour from Happy Times with Charles Mayburn is on it. Richie Cole, John, Freddie Hendrix, and other many other great musicians. And, I had to postpone my tour because of COVID-19. The CD was released 5 months ago, and right after that, boom, COVID. So eventually, it's being postponed. We don't know when. We don't know when we'll be able to tour and travel again. But in the meantime, I decide to teach full time. You know, Play music, be online, and teaching online drum lessons. And I'm glad I did that because this, first of all, it motivates me to practice and get better, and also practice some stuff that I had no time before COVID. So now I'm working on
yeah,
different techniques. I'm working on different things. I'm developing great hands, and I'm teaching a lot. A lot of people are, calling, for online drum lessons, and I got a lot of students from all over the place, from China, Japan, New York, Boston, Cincinnati, Ohio, and LA, Europe. So I'm very blessed. I'm doing this and excited. In fact, this morning I woke up yesterday, and this morning I woke up so early to teach some people in Europe, and then I had my last lesson before I talked to you before,
yeah,
about doing the test.
yeah.
So it's great. I love sharing my drumming, my experience, my music with others, and this is the time to get better. This is the time to do something for us. We should take this time in a positive way, and we should, really dedicate ourselves to what we love besides the family. Family first, health, family, and music. That's all we got left. That's all we got left
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Just like giving and play music and do what we love and get better at it.
Well, Pepe, thanks so much. Before we finish up, I want to ask you if you can give us some advice for young drummers and young musicians in general. Give a little advice, and then you have your drum set behind you. If you want, you can play something. We'll include it
Oh,
in the video.
well, I gotta say it. Uh, like I said before, follow your heart. We all have a dream in our heart, and if we don't follow it, if we don't pursue that dream, sooner or later you're gonna regret that. The time will come that will drive us crazy. So I refused. I renounced a lot of things in order to please my heart. Now, if you're ready, I'm talking about those young musicians out there. If you are ready to make the commitment, because this is a commitment, it's like religion. If you're ready to make the commitment of practicing, spit blood on the instrument, and become the best you can be, listen to a lot of music, go check out the greatest jazz musician or wherever your heroes, musicians' heroes are. Go check them out. Go check them out. Support those people. Respect people who knows more than you do. Be humble. Practice and move on with your life because that's the only thing you can do. And you have to really. Nothing happens overnight. This is a long process. I know the music business is very hard. So I will also suggest to the young upcoming musicians to go around, meet people, go out. Give you even sometimes people shut the door right on your face. It's okay. Knock again. The time will come and you will find an open door for you. There is a space for everyone out there, but you gotta be somebody who knows what he's doing. You gotta know your instrument inside out. You gotta know the music. You gotta practice every day. Listen to and check out the masters of your genre. It can be jazz, funk, classical, anything. Find out because music is not something that it's not a it's something that anyone can really make that commitment. So if you have the passion and you combine your passion with your talent and you spend time, you invest time in it, you'll be okay.
Thank you, Pepe. Yeah, play something if you
welcome.
want. Play something if you want.
Something short.
You have your
Hold on.
drum set.
Hold on.